Better still, hit the subscribe button and then join us so we can enjoy the conversation together. Also on Twitter, use that hashtag Lagos Talks 981. We have a special guest.
Yes, indeed. So this morning, we're going to be taking a closer look at domestic and sexual violence. And in the studio with us, we have got Ttitilola Vivour-Adeniyi joining us from Lagos State DSVRT that deals with this specifically. Good morning. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Good morning.
Thank you so much for coming in this morning. It's such an important conversation that we're about to have because domestic and sort of sexual violence is something that, it sort of sits in the background. We tend to see a lot of news stories about it, but people don't really understand how to address it, or better yet, still try to just sweep it under the carpet. So can you please just introduce yourself to our listeners who are hearing you, some for the first time, some listen to you when you did call in on a segment where we were dealing with a particular story about the moves that Lagos State is making towards that. But can you enlighten us a bit more?
Okay, my name is Ttitilola Vivour-Adeniyi. I'm privileged to serve as coordinator of the Lagos State Domestic and Sexual Violence Response Team.
So what exactly is the Domestic and Sexual Violence Response Team, and why? When was it set up? How long has it been in there for? And what is its purpose and its ambit?
Okay, it was set up in 2014, September to be precise, because of the high level of reportage of cases relating to rape, domestic violence, and child abuse. At that time, we found out that there was no coordinated response to these issues. Different agencies, different responder agencies were working in isolation. And what you have to realize is that most of these cases require multidisciplinary parents because they need. Sometimes law enforcement may try to frustrate survivors from getting justice, so we need to put some pressure on the system to ensure that justice is done. And then sometimes you find out that the parents of the child may have neglected the child because there's no reason for neglect, but sometimes you find out that's hard. So we have to provide empowerment. There's no one agency that can offer these services.
Okay. Stuff. So I know one of the first stories that came out was a little earlier this year from the Punch newspaper about Lagos State making that move, and you started this program, and very recently and how at least I first spoke to you, which was over the phone, was because we were dealing with a case where you'd started going into institutions, right, corporations, and having talks with people as to how they deal with things like sexual harassment. Now, when we hear, domestic and sexual violence and sexual harassment, people aren't necessarily sure about what the relationship is, what exactly sexual harassment is. It's a lot of people think it's so far removed from domestic violence. How do they relate with each other? Why was it important to create this sensitization process for companies and people who work in companies?
Okay, so part of our work plan, our 2018 work plan, that's the DSVRT work plan for the year, is to ensure that we're able to address people in the workforce. We have different engagements with market men, market women. We go to churches, we go to mosques, schools, we engage teachers and other responder agencies. But we found out that we're not properly engaging people in the workforce.
Okay.
So we looked at what will affect them and how can we put our message to them. So what obviously will come up is sexual harassment in the workplace, impact of domestic violence on the workplace. And that is what informed our advocacy to the corporate organizations. And then recently we've started to see an increase in reporting from mostly women for now that say that they are being sexually harassed. They don't know what to do. Most times, there's no evidence. It's very spontaneous. It can be a wink. It can be a snide remark.
It can be a grope.
It can be a grope. Well, yes, that is an extreme case. But you have cases of, your bum is looking very ravishing in that dress. And it's so spontaneous, you cannot record it. And then it starts to, when you don't address it immediately, it starts to escalate. Then requests for sexual favors, the failure of, or the rejection of which now creates a hostile working environment.
Okay.
So these things have gone on for so long. I don't think anybody's in denial that it's just a new phase. No, it's not. It has always been there. But I think with the advent of social media advocacy, people are now speaking up more. And so we decided that let's not just wait to keep on receiving these cases. Let us look at this from a more proactive approach. Let's look at this from a more proactive standpoint, how can we engage people in the workforce? First of all, what is sexual harassment?
Yes, please. I was going to say, we need to go back to that.
Yes.
And the reason I say that is because, you talked about a wink, you talked about extreme cases of groping, and the spontaneity and sometimes lack of evidence.
Yes.
Even though Lagos State has reminded people that sexual harassment is a criminal offense,
Yes,
so it can be prosecuted.
Yes.
Now, there are a number of people, and sexual harassment, of course, it can be male or female that carries this out, which is another important thing to note. But people do, overwhelmingly, the response that we got following the last conversation that we had on this topic was that people just didn't really seem to understand. They say, "Oh, I'm just playing with you."
Well, let me not say this country, this part of the world. Unwanted advances or unwanted sexual, the refusal of which creates a hostile working or learning environment. That is it generally.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it can be groping, as you said. It can be winking, snide remarks. It can be, if you do not succumb to it, you will not be promoted.
Yeah.
Just different nuances that basically makes the receiver uncomfortable. So it's almost, it's subjective and it's objective.
Yes.
It makes the person uncomfortable. It makes the environment hostile. You cannot focus. You cannot concentrate. There was a lady that came and she said, before she used to love her job, but all of a sudden she literally has to drag herself to go to work.
And you start avoiding the
Start avoid, and then most times it's usually your line manager, for instance, somebody that you have interface with on a daily basis. So there's a limit to how you can avoid this person.
I mean, it puts people under fear. People are. So how do I address this? Well, we'll look at other areas and ask more questions. But Lagos, please join this conversation by sending us a message on WhatsApp 0809 440 981. Our special guest is the coordinator of the Domestic and Sexual Violence Initiative in Lagos, and the steps. Really, you're talking about the steps to address it and addressing all these underlying areas. Mrs. Ttitilola Vivour-Adeniyi. We'll come back to this conversation right after this break.
All right, excellent. Yeah, no, it's really concerning because people, there's this sense of it shouldn't really matter, and they miss that, how uncomfortable people get and how pressured you are to supposed to smile and laugh at this. But then what happens when it is almost group encouraged? Because sometimes you have, and I have been in meetings where people make the most inappropriate comments about, in that situation, that happened to be a female, someone that had come in to give a certain talk. And I just thought, what is good? It was early on in my years of view. And I just thought, what is going on? It's not, it was just a
Really, haha. Really, you guys?
I literally, that's the thing. I didn't know what to do. I froze. And that's the thing, right? But silence, these things thrive in silence. Yes. Because I genuinely didn't know what to do. I was still in this space. I was just like, wow, this is rather uncomfortable.
Because tomorrow it might be you.
Yeah. Exactly. So what then happens? You speak up in that situation.
Yes, you can just quickly address it. Because most of these people, they are cowards.
Yes. So once you address it, they back down. That's true. That is very important. Chai.
What made you get on it in the first place? Like, what made you? Because it's almost. Is it?
Which one?
The coordinator.
Oh, it happened to me.
Oh, right. So it's a passion.
I didn't set out. It happened.
No, it's very important. I became very aware of very quickly is that it even affected the way that I dress in a lot of situations. Because I'm like, listen, certain places I'm going to, I'm like, yo,
but even if you call
covered head to toe,
still
somebody's still gonna say something, try and grab your hand.
Fine girl.
Wow.
And then how many do you want to fight?
That's the problem. That's the problem. That's it.
It's not like you have to avoid those places, but you have to be mentally prepared.
Mindful, yes.
That, okay, this is going to happen.
This is the area. This is the area I'm approaching. Okay, oh dear. All right, we're back in now.
My name is My Lagos is my lifetime. My Lagos are the memories I cherish. My Lagos is crazy.
Oh my gosh, I was distracted.
But all at the same time, it's fun. I will never forget how when it was Christmas time, the businesses of Lagos gradually
Studio.
devoid of traffic.
Mics are up.
Where everyone comes to fulfill
Lagos, you're listening to Smooth 98.1 FM, Smooth Breakfast with Olu and myself, Valentine. And part of Lagos Talks special that we're having the discussion today is actually on the topic on the understanding domestic violence, sexual harassment, and the steps to address it.
Yes, indeed. In the studio with us, we have the coordinator of the DSVRT, Ttitilola Vivour-Adeniyi. She is helping us to understand a little bit more what it means, especially looking right now at the moment at sexual harassment, because there's a sensitization going on at the moment that Lagos State is doing, especially with companies and people understanding things that are appropriate and things that are not in a workplace. Yes. Now, during the break in Lagos, we are encouraging you to call us up if you have questions, if you have comments. Just before the break, we had spoken about what constitutes sexual harassment, and it really is any unwanted sexual advance or commentary, which could then, the refusal of which could lead to a hostile work environment, which does happen when people suddenly feel that they are being singled out, being pressured, and they say no, or if they say no, it could affect their job, it could affect how they work. Some people start avoiding the particular entrances to get into the workplace. People start skirting around. But during the break, I did ask Ttitilola, I asked Lola an interesting question, because I had an experience when I first moved into the country, into the workforce, the corporate workforce, where there was a group meeting where a comment was made, a highly sexualized comment was made about a visiting speaker. And it made me so uncomfortable that I just froze. But you had a response to that. I mean, what happens in that sort of situation?
Yes, so as we're saying, you have a role as a bystander. It could be a very, very short response. Like this is not appropriate, guys. You have to, make it too serious. But you just need to quickly we have a role to play. You can quickly inform that person that the remark was being made about that. Is what they said. It can be a verbal remark, but it escalates. Sexual and gender-based violence does not stop unless it is addressed. So today it can be verbal, it can progress to touching, it can even lead to rape or sexual assault by penetration. So immediately it happens, nip it in the bud so that it doesn't escalate.
Well said, Lola. But when you look at it, right, Nigerians seem to have this attitude of, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Just like the example that Folu, posited just a moment ago. You mentioned, you call out people for acting inappropriately like that, and they look at you like, so what are you now? Yes. You're coming in this, you're acting, like a foreigner or something like that. Those comments, how do we address? Because it sounds very plausible, very easy on text, or even just as we say it, but how do we get through this process? Are there certain agencies that we can involve that give us immediate reactions or immediate action on this to address this issue?
Yeah, we have DSVRT,
right?
And one of the services that DSVRT offers as regards sexual harassment, as we said earlier on, most times there's no evidence. So we put you in touch with a legal practitioner that provides you legal advice. If you want to file for civil compensation, or if you want to press charges, criminal charges, we advise you based on the evidence. If you don't have evidence, we advise on how to build evidence, how to get evidence. And then it's criminal. If you want to prosecute, we facilitate that. And then sometimes it starts to affect the mental health of the person that is involved. So we have clinical psychologists that we work with that can, and all our services are free. So the most important thing is speak up. Why do you look like
No,
that?
because it comes as a surprise to hear
this is
such
government.
Yeah.
All our services are free. So the most important thing is speak up. The person needs to speak up and get help.
Okay, so speaking up now, what happens then? It has escalated to that point where you do feel that they need to. How do they reach DSVRT?
Okay.
And how do you take it on? Because we now know that Lagos State has allocated special courts, in fact, for sexual offences, as far as we understand that, 4 special courts solely for the prosecution of sexual offences and a couple of other cases. So how does a person escalate it to that point, especially if they feel that their boss, their line superior, is all powerful? This woman or this man in charge is making things virtually impossible, and it could cost me everything in the end. What does one do in that situation?
Yes, please let me just add that before you even escalate to government or to other organizations, please let's have a documentary thread for a trail
Okay.
in the office, so you can write to the HR.
Okay.
This is the issue I'm having, and then let's see if the HR responds, because that's their role. And so, because you're building a case, whether we like it or not, it's a case you're building.
Yeah.
So posterity will judge you that you did everything possible to, ensure that this was adequately addressed before you go out. Because at the time you're going out, it's not just the person involved. The company too can be liable, because it's almost like as if you are encouraging the perpetration of sexual harassment in your workplace.
Okay.
So, but then how can you reach us? Social media.
Okay.
Our office is in the secretariat. We have hotlines.
Yes.
0813-796-0048.
Sorry, please take it slowly.
0813-796-0048.
Indeed, we will tweet that to you as well.
Please. And then we have a short code, *6820#, where you can report. And then, as I said, social media.
They're at DSVRT.
Everything at DSVRT. And then we have an email, of course, info@dsvrtlagos.org. And then we have an active website where people can actually go and get resources, get information.
Yeah.
We have a sexual harassment guide that's also available for download on the website. So, but we want to think that we're pretty accessible.
All right, we've got messages coming in already. Abdul sends in this message saying it is beautiful that Lagos State is taking this step. Sexual harassment is a big deal. You see, a lot of us guys, well, we don't even know what we do at times. So thank you for the information, and we need to keep thinking about others.
There's this one from Ben from Satellite Town. Ben says, there's a new and common set by which lead men of their prey as sex predators and lure them into illicit acts. They say, you look takeaway. Yes, they have a website people or for people to lodge sexual harassment. This
Yes,
kind of website available.
our website, dsvrtlagos.org.
Okay.
There's that one. Report it. You can go and report. Or you can even just send us
Timeline. For instance, if somebody lays a comment today, how soon, following the case, if it provides the required evidence, like you earlier said, how soon is
I
this?
believe within 24 hours we should be able to respond. The *6820# is immediate.
Okay.
You get immediate response. The email, I would say within 24 hours.
Okay.
Okay. Now, something else that I think I would like us to talk about a little bit is on one, which was making everything possible, the situation. So whether that person is going to listen immediately, it's important to write in the company. But what if it's happening? Let's go back now to the home. If this is domestic abuse, this is now you're in a relationship. How do people find themselves? Because people believe, first of all, that a lot of people are of the opinion that a wife cannot, be raped, for example, by a husband, things like that. They say, well, sometimes women cause certain, people cause certain things in their behavior, their attitude. So how do you deal with abuse when it's now in the home? It's outside of the official space, it's outside of the office space, and how do you recognize the signs that maybe it's happening to a friend, it's happening to a child, and things of that nature?
Okay, so domestic violence.
Yes.
Which is now the wider ambit.
Yes. Most times, survivors of domestic violence will tell you, if they will be honest, tell you that they saw the signs before going into the relationship. Some of the signs, for instance, quick involvement. The person doesn't want to cut for too long because the person doesn't want to reveal his or her true color.
Yeah.
Anger, possessiveness, jealousy, stalking, calling you repeatedly. Wait. Okay, you said you were with. Pass the phone to that person. Let me say hello. Hello, you are there. Oh, you are the person.
Wow.
Okay.
Take a selfie where you are.
Pass the phone.
My
to that
goodness,
person.
red flags everywhere.
Those are red flags. And the thing is, when you see those red flags, what do you do? And that's why we believe strongly in advocacy. Because sometimes, yes, they see the red flags, but they don't know what to do. And because of our society, there's so much pressure to get married. Violence or all the abuse that the person is experiencing. So it can be very, very tough. And we always say that it's easier to call off an engagement than to walk out of a marriage.
Yeah.
So at the point where you're seeing all these red flags, what do? You can speak to a psychologist, you can speak to a counselor. Put all these things before them. Are these things, are they going to change? Some people will tell you, I saw the flags, but I thought I could change him. I thought God could use me to change him. I thought maybe he did not have money. Maybe when we struggle, they would even start blaming themselves. That's the psychology of violence.
Yeah.
The way the perpetrator acts, it's a cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So then they do it. So most times it usually starts with emotional, then progressive survival, then it's physical, then there's what you call a honeymoon stage where they're begging, and then they now say, oh, if you did not do this, I would not have hit you. And then they're in that honeymoon bubble, and then you're waiting for the next thing to happen, then you're back again. So at that honeymoon stage, the survivor even starts to feel that it's his or her fault. Yes. So it is such a vicious cycle. So first of all, you have to be able to identify the signs. And then when you identify the signs, you have to really take a decision. Is this something that I am willing to spend the rest of my life with? Is this something I can address? And is the person even willing to address the problem? Because most of the times, if you are privileged to meet perpetrators of domestic violence, they will say to you that they don't have any problem. It is the woman or the man that has issues. If the person can just bridle their tongue, I will not do this. If they can put the food on the table early, on time, I will not do that. So they don't even know that they have a problem. So how can you address a problem if you do not think you have a problem?
Lagos, call us up on 0144899981 if you want to join in this conversation at the moment. Ttitilola Vivour-Adeniyi is in the studio, and she's the coordinator of the Domestic and Sexual Violence Response Team. It's the Lagos State initiative to help people tackle domestic violence, sexual harassment, and the like. Now, they do have a hotline that you can call if you are concerned, you are worried about someone, or you're concerned for yourself. You can call 0813-796-0048. You could also dial a short code, which is *6820#. Of course, they are also reachable on social media at DSVRT on all social media platforms. And also on the social media platforms, you will see the link to their website, which is dsvrtlagos.org. It's very comprehensive, and they really do try to help you out as much as possible. Now, we've also got messages coming in still on WhatsApp.
Yeah, this one is from... So, good morning, guys. There's a very thin line and sexually harassing her. Please, madam, can you define what constitutes the latter? Nice initiative by the Lagos State government. I mean, the line, the thin line between wooing a woman and sexually harassing her, because you find...
Is there a thin line?
Yeah.
I think there is. I think the operative word is uncomfortable. What makes the person, the receiver, you may not want to your space. You have set their boundaries. You don't want that. So what makes the person that is on the receiving end uncomfortable?
Recognizing the person you're dealing with and taking them as...
Remember that number to send a message to 0809 88881.
Just assume that because funny, it was a joke. No, they were laughing. Why can't you laugh?
Yeah, exactly. Do you know, we're having this conversation last week with a group of young guys. I'm giving examples. One guy that works with KPMG said some people just... Sorry for that. Some people just did their hands in your handbag. Without asking. I mean, invasion of privacy, it starts there as well. You know, they just come into your space, and it happens everywhere.
All the time, people touching you. I'm not so, violence. That I'm not a very touchy person. It takes me a minute. I need to know you, and I need to be comfortable with you, right? So I don't mind people that I've known for a while hugging, but if I don't know you, that's just who I am and what I'm like. So sometimes people are like, "Oh, why can't you?" So I'm like, "That's your business. I've told you already."
They feel entitled.
Yes, I'm like, "You're not entitled."
Are you the first person? What's
and it very quickly turns to aggression. That's the other thing I noticed. It goes from a 0 to 100, and once you say no to something, like, what would you think you are? Because you're not even fine.
That is
0 to 100.
It quickly escalates.
The next thing that you're going to hear, you're like, wow, what's going on? So everyone out there who's watching, please just be very mindful of how you interact with people, because everybody is different, and not everyone accepts the same things.
But I think it's good. We've started the conversation.
Yes.
I think it's good. When we finished at Unilever, we got calls that, they were saying, if you touch me like this, I'll report you.
Yes.
It was a bit comical, but we have started
having the conversation. That's what's important.
Knowledge.
That's
No,
true.
no.
Okay, excellent. People are trying to call. Also, it would be nice to maybe touch a little bit on when it escalates into fatalities,
Okay.
or maybe also a little bit before that in institutions, because I think a lot of people deal with that, with the threat of it in schools. That tends to be a bit concerning for them. So lecturers, teachers, that sort of thing.
I want to quickly ask a question on involvement of religious institutions, because certain institutions have some things that I think they enable either spouse to the rights they should have, but if you look at it rationally, it doesn't make sense. For instance, some religions obviously enable multiple wives, and then some traditional religions will say, "Oh, you've already paid your bride price, so
But
it's
the
almost
fact
like
that-
buying the woman, so you own her."
Yes, but the fact that you have multiple
Multiple
wives does not
you shouldn't
mean
respect.
and that does not mean people they cannot coexist.
Yes, exactly.
What
Because
about-
people coexist.
Back in the days, they
Yes.
they had it and they didn't have all these kind of issues.
And you're listening to the Smooth Breakfast with Valentine.
Studio. Back to the show, still talking the domestic violence, sexual harassment, and the steps to address it. With us in the studio is a special guest, coordinator of the domestic and sexual violence response team
Yes,
in
indeed.
Lagos, Ttitilola Vivour-Adeniyi.
Yes. Lagos, do call us up. We see the lines are blinking 0144899981. We've talked about what constitutes sexual harassment. Some people have said, listen, there's a thin line between wooing a lady and sexually harassing her. Lola very clearly explained that it's a little bit subjective. It's about how the receiver feels at the end of the day. And if you can see, and if you're paying attention to the person you're trying to woo, allegedly, you should be able to see when that person is uncomfortable with your advances. And that should be an indication for you to perhaps step back. Everybody is different. Everyone responds to different levels of pressure differently.
Especially to our friends, not precisely
Please.
any market.
Stop grabbing my hand.
Just shouting, "Sister, I like your color.
We're going to
You're my
fight."
friend, fine girl." Nah, disrespectful. But a quick question, Lola. I was thinking about, we're having this conversation behind the scenes, but a quick question. Traditional and of the likes, so corporate institutions as well, institutions of marriage, some institutions actually give some allowance to certain behavioral patterns that are exhibited by either spouse.
Yes.
How do you address this as a team?
Yes. Religious institutions of the domestic violence cases we receive in our office, they have already explored been to the church or they've been to the mosque. So, and then when they found out that I wasn't working, then they. So last year we realized this, and we found out that there's a need to engage religious institutions, because whether we like it or not, there are some people that have so much respect for their leaders that they will literally do anything that their leader says. So we need to get these people on our side.
Yeah.
Bearing in mind that we may not be able to hear all the cases.
Yeah.
But if they are being heard at that level, we need to empower them, we need to train them, they need to be informed. And then they need to realize that these are criminal allegations. The same way you cannot mediate in cases of murder or armed robbery or kidnapping. There's a limit to your intervention. At some point, you have to have interface with government. And this year, we're seeing people, religious institutions, referring cases to us. We've been managing it. Now we fear that there's threat to life. We need you to step in. And I think that is how it should be. We need to have that interface. We're invited to churches and mosques. We take over their pulpits. We preach our message.
Nice.
And then we have people, good feedback. Sometimes telling us to come back, sometimes asking us for numbers, they want to repair, and all of that. And I think that's how it should be done.
All right. Thank you very much for that, Lola. So let's now into, if people are getting married, how quickly it happens sometimes, how angry people get. But then let's all a bit about when this involves life-threatening situations and what happens in such scenarios, what to do in such scenarios to perhaps address, because we have been seeing more and more in stories in the papers, horror stories of maybe wives stabbing husbands, attacking children, and the likes. But while you consider that, let's also take a call from our listeners.
Good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us. What's your name?
My name is
Shola, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Maryland.
All right, go ahead.
Yes, I just want to commend the Lagos State government for what this initiative, I think, is
Mm.
And while one does condone domestic violence in any manner, I think the government also needs to take a look at what I call social violence. And you touched on it. Take, for example, the market where, especially where ladies clothing are sold. There isn't any lady who will pass there who will not be harassed in one way or the other.
Mm.
Sometimes on the road in Lagos, for example, I get verbally abused, especially by lady drivers usually doing their school run, have kids sitting in front or standing in the middle with no seatbelt on. And just a slight comment, madam, put a seatbelt on this time, you get abused. My point is, as a society, I think we've become very verbally aggressive. And if you see like one day, in the mornings or afternoon, you see ladies taking to school, bringing them
It's frightening.
down, you sound a warning, then you get abused.
Yeah.
Because we're so aggressive. I see a lot of it, especially among young people who seem to throw away a lot of social values under the guise of modernity being hip.
Okay, Shola.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Shola.
Shola. Let's give Lola a chance to accept this. Although I will just say that young people are being raised by old people, so perhaps we should be
Right.
asking what the older generation are teaching the young generation who are acting this way. Sexual violence he spoke about is very real,
Yes.
and it is very worrying. Actually.
You can feel his passion,
Yes.
and his grief. And
Yes.
but this is one of the burden of being a reformer. They will insult you. I've had cases where I've cautioned women. You're driving, your son is in the front seat, jumping. Imagine if there's a son, you have to quickly halt.
The child is going
That's how
through the window.
So, and I've gotten not too favorable response, but I will still keep the mandated reporter. If I see something, I must say it. So we continue, you keep at it. And he may not know, but he has started something in that woman's mind.
Right.
Yes.
She may not put the seatbelt immediately because she's embarrassed.
Yes.
But you'll be surprised that maybe 2 minutes later, she shouts at the person, go and sit down.
Yeah.
Go and put on your seatbelt. He has started. I want to encourage you, please, keep at it.
Even similar to that, you find a lady, I think men should stop this. You see a lady driving herself on the streets, and she's probably not, negotiating as fast as you would expect, and you shout, I
just
must
a
drive
woman.
myself, things like that. People should recognize, because some of these things have become so normal that we are allowing them happen without realizing that they're very abusive behavioral patterns.
They are.
Absolutely. It is really violent. And we need to remember that, as Ola pointed out, we're all responsible together. I know there is a tendency to point at younger generation and say, these younger people, but they are being raised by you. You are raising young kids
Are they
to not
being
have
raised?
respect. That's the point.
Please, I want to ask both of you this question. You educate us. How do we help the men understand that a lot of sexually harassing behavior, if that's an allowed term, that being referred to us men should actually be, how do we identify those things? Because you find a lot of men excusing such behavior and acting in almost owning it as a man and saying, oh, this is normal, you should feel grateful that this is happening to you.
So we don't see men as our enemies, because we realize that in this fight we need to. So it may be a point, it may be an issue that the man may not even know that his remark or his silence is encouraging it. So it is us getting them, empowering them, informing them that this and this and this is your role. And you may have a sister, you may have a daughter in the future, you may have a granddaughter, and these things come around. What goes around? Encourage men to see themselves as flag bearers and voice. Sometimes men will listen more to a man talking as opposed to a woman talking to him. They just say, the women have come again. But if it's a man talking to a fellow man, we believe that he would
listen a little more.
Yes.
Lola Vivour-Adeniyi, thank you so much for coming in this morning. Unfortunately, that's
having
all the time we have for this particular special. A big thank you to everyone who's joined. We've got to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be switching lanes and talking a little bit about money. Have a good morning, Lagos.